There's advice that I used to get starting out in art that confused me then, but now, after working with hundreds of students, I feel like it's some of the best advice you can get. But in this video, I'd like to make it make sense, and once you have a grasp on it, it'll speed up your learning significantly. So have you ever heard anyone say, draw what you see, not what you think you see? Now, most people hear this and go, yeah.
Shh. So, don't shush me.
Now, part of this is because drawing is one part observing what you see, and one part communicating what other people are going to see. Think about this in terms of having a conversation with someone else. Now, maybe hypothetically, this is two people that have a strained relationship where neither of them really see eye to eye. Well, that kind of made it sad. You could have two people making very standard statements like, hello, how are you doing? And I'm all right now that that's over. And if you're just reading back the transcript, it feels like there's something missing here. And that's because in person, you could see that person B is covered in mud and bug bites. And the thing that's over now is them being chased through a swamp. But at 2 points, this communication could break down, as it often does. Person A could fail to notice the state that person B is in, and they take them at their word that they're all right. Or person B could fail to make it clear enough how they're doing. You know, like when we're doing fine. I'm doing fine. Can't you tell just how fine? In a less swampy environment without as many props, it takes insight and experience for person A to understand how someone else is feeling and how to empathize with them. And if person B isn't feeling heard, there's maybe a chance that they aren't being clear enough, or they don't know how to articulate what they feel. Maybe it's a deep, new, or complicated feeling that's hard to put into words, or hard to say the right way without hurting the other person's feelings. Alright, so going back to drawing, this is exactly what's happening in a lot of student work. Sometimes an artist simply doesn't know how to represent something properly. Their tools for communicating just aren't strong enough. But in other cases, it's actually them being dismissively oversimplistic about what they're drawing, or using symbols that they feel everyone understands instead of accurately representing something. Now you get what I mean, right? Right? Well, if you don't get what I mean, that's because I'm just saying you get what I mean prematurely in lieu of actually helping you understand something. I've talked about the pitfalls of drawing abstract symbols instead of the thing that you actually see before, referring to this as cartoons of cartoons, symbols based on symbols instead of symbols based on the real thing. If your only point of reference for a rabbit character was Bugs Bunny, you would probably end up creating an odd perversion of a creature with long limbs and gloves, but you would also be copying the line work of a Bugs Bunny drawing from a superficial surface level, the lines instead of the forms, which gets really noticeable really fast. Thinking of this in terms of our conversation, this is like an alien or say, an insultingly stupid computer program like, an AI that's sludged together things that people have written on the internet without any actual sentient thinking ability of its own, observing real people communicating. You'd end up with a lot of Mondays, am I right? And it is what it is. Things that are said by people and sound a lot like people talking, but likely lacking coherent, meaningful communication. So maybe you aren't drawing an entirely new rabbit character solely based off of bugs because you've seen a real rabbit before. But more commonly, this happens with pieces like hands, limbs, eyes, faces. An artist copies, pulls from, or hopes to get away with drawing, say, a hand the way they've seen another artist draw them, whether stylized or simplified, and end up creating something that just doesn't quite look right. Draw what you see, not what you think you see. Observing and communicating, and actually doing both of those things. What's that thing in conversation that's like observing with our ears? Oh yeah, it's listening. It takes insight to listen to someone talk, understand what they're saying, empathize with them, and then turn around and say, so if I'm hearing you right, followed by your correct interpretation of what they said in your own words, it takes practice and experience to get there. To draw what you see, we are removing the layers of assumptions, dismissive summaries, and quick fixes of what we're drawing, and observing as insightfully as we can. In a way, we are humbling ourselves in our drawing, not making our assertions and inferences more important than the truth. I can remember starting out and seeing how a lot of artists would start their heads with a circle and 2 lines on it. And I sort of understood why they did this. It was to find the center of the head. And the head is a sphere anyway, right? So I would draw characters this way, and ultimately, they wouldn't look right. Mainly because what I thought I saw, not in the subject matter, but in someone else's process, was only part of the process. And while I was seeing the marks they were making, I wasn't seeing the thoughts and experience they already had. A lot of times, this was just some mark making on the page to help place things that they already understood. A head is not only spherical, it has a jaw, it has flat planes like on the side of the head. Those features aren't flatly placed on the surface of the face either, but recessed or protruding. Eventually, I learned the right way to draw a head through study and can condense some of those shapes down into something that's almost spherical if I need to, because I know that the jaw still has to exist. And now it's really easy for me to notice when students are trying to condense all of the features of the head onto a sphere. It's claustrophobic and it doesn't really make sense. But they're drawing what they think they see. A brief summary of half-understood processes, and perhaps no one to interject feedback to the contrary. So practically, our observing can be done not by doing a surface-level study of a subject matter, but exploring it through multiple ways. Figuring out the simple three-dimensional constructed shapes that it makes, finding through lines in gesture, drawing from different angles, poses, and expressions, downloading the subject matter into your mental library. You want to understand a subject before you start stylizing it, before you start, say, putting it in your own words. So here's 3 really nitty-gritty ways to check if you're applying this in your observation, especially as you're drawing from a subject matter or even doing a master study of someone else's work. Number 1 is size, as in the length or proportion of something. A lot of times you can measure by using a portion of your drawing tool, as long as you keep the scale of it consistent. Number 2 is angles. Do you have the degree of an angle down well? Are the 2 sides of the angle going off in the right direction? Pretty simple, but a lot of times it's missed. And number 3 is curves. You might have the curve copied, but curves can be complicated. Is the apex of the curve, or the furthest point of it, hitting in the right place? Because as you can see here, just because a curve starts and ends at the right places doesn't mean it's going to be accurate. Now, I'm not an expert on babies, but I think when a baby starts making baby sounds, it's them trying to imitate what they think you're doing when they hear people talking. They don't know why they're doing it, they're just copying the surface level elements of it. Now contrast that with writers, poets, rappers, all people that didn't just browse a dictionary, finish 3rd grade grammar classes, and start pumping out great examples of language. They have a level of mastery over and deep understanding of the spoken or written word, and the way they wield it is elegant, clever, and profound. Experienced artists do the same thing when they create stylized, different takes on shapes and ideas, elegant ways of expressing something through shape, color, and line. But they didn't get there by starting with stylization or solely copying the way that someone else stylized things. They learned to draw what they see. Then and only then they're able to communicate what they see to others in a way that's not only passably understandable, but resonates. Now, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of newer artists are rushing to make something final or official, like a story or project, but it's noticeable, especially to artists more experienced than them, that they aren't ready yet because of a lot of skipped steps. So I really can't emphasize enough that the practice you do on these observed things will trickle down into even the most stylized, exaggerated, cartoony work that you end up doing. Don't take the shortcut, really listen with your eyes. The whole first module of the Learn Character Design course is on drawing. If you want some help really shoring up those fundamentals, you can support the channel by grabbing Biko's backpack over on Patreon, which looks like this month, and you can of course get personalized critique videos on Patreon as well. Maybe see you at Big Apple Comic Con this weekend. Thanks for watching, and have fun creating.